Hello and welcome everyone. This is the fifth in our series of leadership webinars. Today's topic will be identifying and developing future leaders, and we'll talk about 5 key tips to help you maximize the return on investment that you put into your high potentials. My name is Rick Lepsinger. I will be your host and presenter for today's session. So it may not be surprising to know that attracting and retaining talent is once again one of the top 5 most critical risks that organizations face. For a while, that waned a little bit during the financial crisis and the economic problems, but now this issue is now back on the front burner for most organizations. And we also know that companies with top-tier leadership teams tend to outperform other organizations by nearly 19%. Now, you would think that with this information available, that many organizations would be really focused on ensuring that they had a strong bench and a good pipeline. Yet, according to the Harvard Business Review, only 15% of North American companies reported that they had enough successors in their pipeline for key leadership positions. Now again, it might just be me, but you're wondering, why is this? Why aren't people more focused or able to build this adequate bench? And the issue is, I think, not so much that they're not attending to it. Most organizations realize and understand that succession is critical, developing high potentials is critical, but the problem seems to be that many organizations do not have a robust, structured process in place to focus on talent management and succession in general. And as a result of this, what happens is that they tend to invest a significant amount of time, a great deal of effort, and a lot of money on employees who turn out to be the wrong fit, not the right person in general. So let's talk a little bit about high potential employees in general and how do you ensure getting the right people into that pipeline. In general, high potentials are twice as valuable to your organization as other employees because of their long-term impact on the organization and their ability to drive sustained growth overall. Yet more than half will drop out of development programs within 5 years of starting, and that's primarily due to being incorrectly identified. In addition to that, those who stay, 46% fail to meet the objectives in their new roles. So to start, and the beginning, I think, for making a change here and really being able to ensure the right people are getting time and attention is to change your view of how you see high potentials and your preconceived ideas of what a high potential employee really is. As it turns out, only 1 in 7 of high performers are actually high potential employees. And when we talk about high potential, we're talking about ability. But it's not just current ability. It's also the ability to learn and to apply what you learn. And in addition to that, it's the desire and the commitment to lead your company overall. So what can you do to maximize the time, the dollars, the effort that you put toward developing these high potentials for the long haul in the organization? And I'll share 5 tips with you. The first is around developing a success profile. Here, what you're trying to do is define what good looks like for the leadership positions or the levels that you're focused on. You want to make sure that you're outlining the skills and the behavioral traits that are necessary to succeed, but not just in the current position. It's more future-focused and to succeed in the future. So the idea is to start by identifying key positions, and this is driven by strategy based on what you're trying to accomplish. For one of our clients that we're working with right now, they focused on their middle managers. It's their area directors. There are 50 or 60 of these area directors, and based on their strategy related to driving growth and customer satisfaction, this position and these individuals were identified as being critical to being able to implement and execute on that strategy. And the organization determined that they did not really have the talent that they needed in those spots right now, and they didn't have a strong bench of people to fill those spots as there was turnover and as they grew. And then you need to develop competencies. But again, here you're trying to move from generic competencies to getting something that really defines what that competency looks like in your organization. And in order to do that, you want to have behavioral anchors. So for instance, many competencies have things, many models have things like strategic thinking, results orientation, customer focus, personal leadership, and not to diminish those, but they tend to appear on almost every company's competency models. And they, rightly so, they actually probably do belong. But how do you clarify, how do you define what those competencies look like in your organization so they're just not a generic competency, right? And to capture what the future focus would look like. And the key here is to have the behavioral examples or the behavioral anchors that define what good, satisfactory behavior looks like in this particular competency and what exceptional performance looks like in this particular competency. It not only enables leaders to use this model more effectively in talent management and performance management, but it also clarifies what that competency looks like in your organization overall. The second tip is around assessing talent. Now again, here the idea is to conduct an in-depth assessment. Many organizations tend to use a very narrow band, and really they may even just rely on the manager's input. Manager's input is actually quite critical, but it tends to be very subjective and it may not be multidimensional. So what you're trying to do is add other assessment tools to be able to have a broader, more robust look at what these individuals can do now and what their potential is in the future. It also helps to use a third party to conduct the assessments. Again, it adds a degree of objectivity and rigor to the process, and you want to take a look at group data to be able to look at organizational strengths and gaps as you're thinking about the allocation of resources for development. So again, going back to that client that we were talking about, they put in place for these area directors an accelerated leadership development program where they had the kickoff meeting, which was a 3-day session, which provided an opportunity to collect data using a variety of assessment tools. There were role plays where people had to determine how they would handle a particular situation and then actually do it rather than just intellectualize about it. Group simulations and leaderless group activities, panel discussions, presentations, and also a 360, which gets at their current performance, and leadership questionnaires. And in our process, we tend to use the Hogan and the OPQ 32 to really get at personality. And personality characteristics really are quite relevant in terms of being able to assess potential because they get at aptitude. They get at the ability to learn and the ability to apply what's been learned. It gets at personal preferences and characteristics that then drive performance and drive behavior. So again, you're trying to collect data from several different perspectives using several different data points and methodologies overall. The next is to review the results, and you want to do this on 2 levels. To assemble a talent review panel or board to take a look at these top performers, and you're doing this at an organizational level. So for example, it could be the divisional leadership team taking a look at their high potential group, and it could be the enterprise leadership team taking a look at enterprise-wide assets in general. But you also want to share the results with the high potential employee and their supervisors, because you want to start to lay the groundwork to drive development planning at both levels. So here's an example of what might be presented to the high potential employee and their manager. And what you're looking at here is the summary report. And this would also have a narrative with it, but you can see that for each one of the competencies along the top, when they went to their accelerated leadership development program, they went through a series of role plays and group activities. Each one of them was targeted to a particular competency, and they get a numeric score. And by the way, at that leadership, accelerated leadership program, the assessors come together to calibrate their observations to make sure that the highs and lows are accounted for and the scores are accurately representing the person's behavior during that session overall. As you look across, you can see each individual's overall score as well as their individual scores for each competency. And as you look down, you can see kind of the overall for that particular competency across the population. And then a second data display would be the integrated data, where you're taking the performance data as well as the potential data and being able to plot it. Now this is a 4-box. Many of you may be using a 9-box, but you're really trying to get some sense of how this population relates to each other and where your high performers and your high potentials are, and where your low performers with low potential are, to be able to make some decisions about moving forward with this population. And then to present the data to the C-suite. The idea here is that many succession planning, talent management initiatives, although the senior managers understand the importance conceptually, when it comes to actually investing time and effort, it sometimes is difficult to get the full support, and this data can help you make the case for the leadership development program. So it's more than just finding people's place in the box. It's now to go forward. Again, we're working with another client that is trying to help people understand how to use a 9-box model, but the thing they ran into is that once they place people in the box, the process tends to stall because people are not sure about both what they should do around development or how to proceed. So you want to demonstrate likely outcomes and the costs associated with improper training, and nearly half of all employees fail in their new roles without proper training and development. You're trying to make this case to be able to move forward to the development planning component, because again, a key element for getting the return on the investment is taking it beyond the assessment and moving toward development. So you want to work with business leaders to develop stretch assignments, and you want to enroll them in robust leadership development opportunities that are tailored to their particular needs overall. So you're doing it at an organizational level, and you're also doing it at an individual level. So one of the things to try to do is to consider using project-based learning programs, action learning, where people work on a real-world initiative that the senior team or senior managers are actually interested in seeing the recommendation, has really gotten increasingly popular. It's been around for a number of years, but the idea of making it more experiential, project, and practical has made action learning much more in much more demand in general. And you also want to make sure that you're aligning and integrating all this information and the development planning into the performance management system, where you want to link development outcomes and incentives to the accomplishment of key objectives. So the development planning, on the individual level, you'll have plans that might follow that 70-20-10 model, where 70% of your activities are on the job, 20% are through coaching and mentoring, and 10% are through more formal training. And you also might want to try to leverage LMS systems and e-learning opportunities for blended approaches. And in addition, using the aggregate data, you can create group development plans to help human resources determine what the best allocation of resources should be for their training and development dollar. The critical component here is enlisting and involving the direct manager of the high potential. Now, of course, human resources can play a significant role in periodic coaching and being there as a resource, but on the day-to-day execution of the plan, it's actually quite critical to have the direct supervisor involved on a regular basis to both help shape the plan and help the high potential execute the plan, using periodic evaluations and coaching sessions and reassessing the individual skills to be able to measure progress and make appropriate adjustments going forward. So in our case with the organization that we've been talking about, after the accelerated leadership program, which had the 3-day assessment component, they then move into 3 live sessions over the course of the year. And the live sessions focus on skill building in key areas, like influencing interview skills, presentation skills, critical thinking, and things like that. And during the intersessions, there are online development support. So they do their action learning during the intersessions. There are online job assignments, case studies, training, reading, and things they need to be doing during the course of the 9 or 12 months that the program is alive. And each cohort is periodically meets with their coach to talk a little bit about progress and potential adjustments to their plan. The 5th is around analyzing results. Again, you really want to be able to demonstrate the impact of the work that's being done. And you want to rate the improvement in critical skills by using post-training surveys and other metrics. You want to track the rate of retention and promotion among employees that complete the leadership development program, and you want to calculate the recruitment cost. So these are just some examples of what you can do. You want to document progress. And again, this is also to communicate to other key stakeholders about the return that's being achieved. So a structured review of the process, monitoring progress of the talent pool development, monitoring organizational strategy changes and their impact on succession management, the number of leader positions that are filled by the talent pool. In fact, are these high potentials being moved into positions that have additional responsibility? Measure the retention. Is this impacting their willingness and desire to stay with the organization? Is it impacting their overall satisfaction and commitment with the organization? And you want to track the results on bottom line performance, the actual impact on the function or business performance. So what's the payoff in terms of these 5 key steps? One is that talent would be ready when it's needed, a strong bench and a strong pipeline for key individuals to fill key spots. You'll minimize replacement costs around recruitment and selection and overall development because you've integrated succession with performance management and training and development. You'll be able to attract and retain top talent because it helps identify the organization as an employer of choice with your focus and dedication to developing talent. Leadership successes, will greatly outnumber failures, but again, because you've been increasing the likelihood that you have identified the right people with the ability, the desire, and the commitment who would be the right fit. There is an impact on bottom line performance because we know that the research links effective succession management to increased ROI and annual shareholder return, which impacts investor confidence, and you'll have a measurable return on the development investment, which is really what senior managers are frequently looking for. So let's take a look. We have a few moments for some questions. If you'd like to type some of those into the Q&A box, we can take a few questions. And also there were a couple of questions that were sent ahead of time when people registered, so I'll take a moment to talk a little bit about those while we're waiting to see if other questions come through. So one question was, what's the best way to assess gaps in order to target the right development strategies? And really it goes back to the robust objective assessment process, and one that's focused on future competencies. And again, you're trying to take out as much of the subjectivity as possible. You still want to make sure that the manager's input is taken into account and is a big part of assessing potential and performance, but you also want to balance that with a more objective view of their overall performance. So let's see, there's a question that came in. This recommendation would be aligned with a talent system or not necessarily. So yeah, I think if I understand your question, Paula, it's if this is around the talent management system, and really what we are saying is around these 5 key tips, it's really about ensuring that your succession, training and development, and performance management systems are highly integrated into an overall talent management strategy or talent management process. So yes, I think it would be tried to be made more of a systematic process rather than more of an ad hoc process. Hopefully that got at what you were asking. A second question that was sent in was how to ensure that development plans are followed. And this really is one of the key stumbling blocks. People tend to lose momentum, they lose interest, or they don't sustain the effort. So one factor is the commitment and involvement of the direct supervisor. This is, again, critical to make them a key part of the process and give them the responsibility of implementing and supporting the execution of the development plan for their direct report, and to make that part of their development goals as well. So the role of the direct supervisor, they should actually be measured as part of their performance review, the extent to which they're supporting that effort for their direct reports. In addition to that, making and leveraging the performance management system, so you're not kind of doing extra work, but really making it part of performance management in general, and going back to the beginning. If you have identified competencies that really are critical for success and important for the job, and the assessment is seen as fair and objective, and the data that comes out of it is seen as relevant and useful, it tends to be more meaningful and gets a higher level of engagement and commitment for that implementation plan. So a couple more questions. In a company of 45,000 employees, how do you have behavioral anchors for each role? Yeah, and I think that's the key. One of the things we found, and by the way, some of you may be interested in my book. It's called The Art and Science of Competency Modeling. It's available on Amazon.com, where we talk a little bit about some best practices in identifying key competencies and how to make that a really practical cost-effective methodology that you can do internally. But in an organization of that size, what we find is that you don't necessarily have to do behavioral examples or even competency models for each position. Because let's say, for example, if you pick a level of management, let's say a vice president, or I'll do an area director. You know, if you're a vice president in finance or a vice president in marketing or a vice president in R&D, when it comes to the leadership competencies, they're probably going to be fairly similar. And in terms of the general specific behaviors for what does strategic thinking look like, what does results orientation look like in your organization, they'll probably be fairly common across various functions or various roles. The idea of doing a position-specific competency model, in our experience, the difference usually comes down to the technical aspects of the job. And the technical aspects of the job are frequently covered in a job description, right? So the competency model can augment the job description, and then you would have a very broad and clear picture of what it takes to succeed in that particular role overall. Now again, as you move from a vice president to a senior vice president to an executive vice president, the behaviors may change, so you may do it more by level than by doing it by the specific position itself. Okay, all right, I think I got all the questions there. Let me see, I think I might have missed one. No, I think I got them all. All right, if any more questions, anything else? All right, everyone, thank you very much. I hope to see you at our next session that will be in November. All right, everyone, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great week. Bye, everyone.